All right, everybody, welcome to this edition of the Bitcoin News Weekly Recap. We are live today with Scott Dadels. Scott, how you doing?
Good, man. How are you, Rob?
Doing well. Yes, you're calling in from Canada. Scott is the CEO of Block Rewards, as well as the author of the book, The Tao of Bitcoin. And we are going to have a rotating panel of guests that comes on Bitcoin News Weekly, kicking it off with Scott. Very glad to have you here.
Yeah, my pleasure, man. Great to be here.
Yes. So the point of these live streams, of course, is to go over our weekly recap of Bitcoin News Weekly. Our weekly newsletter comes out 7 a.m. Eastern every Monday. So the title for this issue is Corporate Reserves Hit Overdrive as Suits Can't Stop Buying Bitcoin. Bitcoin Vegas 2025 was packed with corporations seeking to add Bitcoin to the balance sheet. So, yes, before we dive into the issue, I think that we should talk about our last week. We were both just in Las Vegas, Sin City together. What did you think? How was it? How was your experience?
Yeah, so it was my first time going to the Bitcoin conference, and I was a very last minute addition. Decided on Friday that I was going to be there. Have been to a lot of different events, but never that one. And I mean, first of all, like the scale of it is just so insane. And I think they said it was 35,000 people, and it felt like every single one of that. Like the nonstop crowds and just a ton of stuff going on. Yeah, so the energy was high. I thought it was interesting to see the kinds of people who were there, and there were a lot of people I felt commenting on the transition of the crowd and the number of sort of like TradFi type people that seemed to be like making up the audience. And I think that's a reflection of the broader conversation. Like, there was running jokes about it being stablecoin conference, but there was a lot of different discussion around, call it, say, like the financialization of Bitcoin, which I think is really reflective of like where we are in the life cycle of the adoption of Bitcoin right now.
Yeah, you're right. It was huge, way bigger than any other conference that I have ever been to. Have been going since 2021, and 2021 was special, right? I mean, it had the breaking out of COVID vibes. They were the first big event to be held in Florida, almost in the nation, I think, at that time. That was also the El Salvador announcement. So a lot of special things happened at that conference. But this one just took it to a whole another level of bigness. 35,000 people at the Venetian in Las Vegas on the Vegas Strip. You were pretty much trapped in there for 3 straight days, right? Under the fluorescent lights, but just because you didn't want to miss a second. There were so many people, everybody in Bitcoin pretty much was there and had a great time. In terms of the suits, yeah, I mean that's what we're talking about today, right? They were numerous, abundant, and well represented on stage. And of course, there's that video going around of them just saying stablecoin, 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 stablecoin. So yes, that was definitely the word for the first couple of days. But I mean, that's what's happening right now in Washington, right? They just passed the Genius bill. There's lots of talk of how Treasury demand is going to push, or stablecoins will push Treasury demand, and that will hopefully help postpone this debt apocalypse that America is about to go down. But it does seem as if Bitcoin is in the highest echelons of power, right? I mean, the president's son were there. JD Vance came to talk. Did you listen to JD Vance?
No, I didn't. I had heard it was sort of underwhelming in terms of his, like, he didn't actually use the word Bitcoin, was what I was told.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that in the opening, he thanked David Bailey, the organizer of it all, but then also Coinbase, who was not
Right.
a sponsor at all, not in appearance, but they got a shout out. Yeah, so his speech was sort of, I would say, lacking of direct substance, right? I mean, it was a rah-rah speech saying that we are a powerful demographic now, that we've definitely got the ear of these politicians, and that we need to unite in the taking on China. I think was the big takeaway, right? Another interesting thing that he said in that speech was that Bitcoin and cryptocurrency sort of has a leaning feel, whereas AI has a left leaning feel.
Interesting.
And so, yeah, he said that while the two camps might be in these different technologies, we need to unite in order to take on China. So, yeah, it's definitely clear that Bitcoin is here to stay. The biggest voices in the country are here and talking about it. But I think we would also be remiss not to talk about Ross. Ross was on stage. Did you see
Yeah.
that?
And Ross was kind of, I think, like the quintessential what everything that was great and everything that maybe people also didn't like about that conference. It's like so cool to have him up there. He did also appear to be like a suit, and he was also talking about like crypto and DeFi and stuff. And this is, I think, just one of the tricky things about trying to have an event of that scale and cater to a really broad audience, and then at the same time also just have it be a really high signal event that's like really hardcore Bitcoin, which it definitely wasn't. And that's not like a knock on Bitcoin Magazine at all. I think it's just kind of the reality of it, right? Like they're doing something really cool and getting all these people together, and at the same time, I think it's also fair to say that there were some compromises made with the kinds of content and the stuff that actually made headlines there.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, when you do it on that scale, you're definitely going to have a lot of people hanging on to the coattails, right? I mean, I think
Yeah.
Sui Network
Yeah.
was a sponsor. Lots of course, Bitcoin layer twos that are questionable in terms of their true Bitcoin-ness, I guess you could say.
Oh, we were talking, all these opportunities to institutional yield on Bitcoin. Like it's just a,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. The amount
I mean,
of
the treasury thing, I think you could make the same argument, and I guess we're going to get there later, but it is a very interesting time going on with maybe a lot of these principles of crypto that are failing in like crypto coins right now, just trying to be sort of like ported to Bitcoin and like the new grift. Like this is the grift of the 2025 cycle, maybe, possibly.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, it seems as if, I mean, retail mania isn't here yet, right? But in terms of hardcore Bitcoiners, I feel like getting us to $100,000 plus is like where we're at $2 trillion is nothing to scoff at. And it's pretty impressive that we're able to do it in 16 years here to go from 0 to 2 trillion. But to go from 2 to 4 trillion, we're probably going to be looking at these corporate treasuries pushing us in that direction. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? We can discuss. But yeah, let's dive into the newsletter this week. So we're definitely going to talk about some of the headlines that came out of the conference. And the first one I'd like to hit is that Block launches Bitcoin payments on Square at Bitcoin 2025, enabling merchants to hold Bitcoin or convert it to fiat. The rollout helps set a Guinness Book World Record with 4,001 Bitcoin transactions within 8 hours. So, of course, Square and Block are owned by Jack Dorsey. He is the CEO, the founder of Block, who runs Square. And for years, people have been saying, when are you going to enable Lightning payments, right? We want to pay in Bitcoin. You have these point of sales machines that are, I think there's over 6 million merchants around the world that use Square. You are a hardcore Bitcoiner. Why are you not allowing us to pay in Bitcoin whenever we go out to one of these locations? He said, in due course. But finally, it is here. And so this is going to be a soft rollout for the rest of 2025 while they experiment and see how things play out. But I believe the plan is that by 2026, all of the Square point of sales machines will have this feature enabled. Another interesting tidbit of this is that Jack Dorsey is a big fan of sort of redenominating Bitcoin, right? From going from 21 million Bitcoin to 2.1 quadrillion, to having sats be represented as Bitcoin. And so on the Square terminals, you will see a $10 transaction will be represented as 9,256 Bitcoin instead of Sats. So removing all the decimal points and using the smallest uh, unit of Bitcoin as the Bitcoin itself. What do you think
Not a
about
fan.
that?
Yeah, I think the block announcement's cool. I think the debate around Sats has been settled to me. Like, there's nothing wrong with Sats. I think it is actually really cool to start using like Satoshis as the unit of account. Makes a ton of sense. So I love that functionality, and we actually do that too. But yeah, man. I mean, there's no need to try and like rename this thing. It's like stop trying to make fetch happen.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, it doesn't make sense to me. If a person can understand that there's 100 cents in a dollar, why can't they understand that
Yeah,
there's 100 million Satoshis in a Bitcoin, right?
totally. And it is like just a great nod to Satoshi. There's like there's no problem with it whatsoever. I think yeah, and this is another thing like you know, the announcement the same time, right? This was the other big thing that happened in Vegas related to Jack was the Seedless thing, right?
Hmm.
And so I think it's like kind of again sort of emblematic of the two steps forward, one step back kind of thing, right? It's like there was a lot of I would say pushback from you know more traditional Bitcoiners who think there's like why would you ever want to have a seedless device? To me, is like yeah. So
Yeah, so they're rolling out this new campaign, lose your seed phrase. BitKey, of course, is another Jack company, and they had a huge booth in the conference hall that was right behind the news desk. So that lose your seed phrase was being subliminally sent out to everybody who
yeah,
watched the live broadcast, of
pretty
course.
good programming.
And I mean, it's funny, right? Because when they say lose your seed phrase, you're probably going to offend a lot of Bitcoiners, whereas new people to the space have no idea what a seed phrase is, right? Like it's completely this alien phrase to them. So yeah, I mean, we talked to the team at BitKey. They're good people, and I mean, while I might not be a fan of the line itself, I think that it's good to have options, right?
Yep,
And for new people into the space who want to have a simple multi-sig that they can set up within minutes, um, this could be a good option, right?
totally.
Uh, but yeah, I do
I
think.
I don't think it's like not to disparage anybody because I think any and all genuine attempt at innovation in the space is good for the space. And I do think that we're going to see a lot of products geared towards onboarding the next wave of masses. And so we're just going to have to get used to seeing things that are less cypherpunk probably. And you know, people will still have the optionality to continue to like, do their own learning and have their own system set up. So yeah, it's not a knock. But I agree. I think the messaging on it could have been potentially different.
Yeah, and the longer I spend in this space, the more I realize that yeah, the rabbit hole is endless. But the depth into which one goes is really unique to that person. And as we've seen with these ETFs and treasury companies, people like it simple.
Totally.
It's a matter of responsibility, right? And the amount of responsibility that people want to take over their wealth is different for each person. And but unfortunately, the majority of people, I think, memorizing 12 words or keeping a cold card is a lot to ask.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think like we're gonna see a lot of this once SAB 121 like really comes in and you see people having the option to have a Bitcoin stored by their retail bank. Like that's just gonna be something that I think a lot of people are gonna do. And not everybody wants to be their own bank. Like it's just not, it's not an urgent or pressing thing for people.
It's not, but we got to keep that ideal alive, right? And to allow people to know that you can be. And also, when you first enter this space, you're very idealistic, right? And that's when people tend to dive the deepest and to want to try out all the new things. So we've got to make sure that they know that these is an option, that you can be your own bank, and that Bitcoin is sovereign and you can control it completely without a third party. Whereas we're just seeing a great addition in the number of third parties coming into the space.
There was an awesome tweet I saw. I can't remember who the reply was, but the original tweet was from Circle. This is last week during the conference. And it was like, what's one thing that people need to know about Circle? And it got ratioed by this response that was like something to the effect of that any wallet can be frozen at any time. With yeah, so.
Exactly. That was Magoo, and then and then Circle deleted the tweet because it was being ratioed so hard. Yeah.
I guess Magoo was there. I wouldn't have known to see him, but yeah, that I think it really was like such a crazy who's who of you're walking around and just seeing people, you're like recognizing all these people that you just might see on podcasts or whatever. Scottie Pippen, it's like yeah.
Scottie Pippen, Tristan Thompson,
Yeah.
he was there. NBA being represented. Were you recognized? Did people come up to you and say, "What's up?" from your end?
A couple people, yeah. People who'd read the book. It's very cool. Nice. Yeah, it's weird. I think this is we're like talking about this is a very weird thing about Bitcoin, and I was talking with Bram about this because Bram was getting recognized a lot, and his podcast has blown up, and super cool for him. And he was just saying like Bitcoin has to be one of the only kind of like spaces where this is actually even just possible, where you start cranking out content and then all of a sudden you're like have some level of recognizability on a global level. Bizarre time to be alive.
Yeah, and I guess that shows you, I mean, we are still early, right? Even if this conference had 35,000 people and the vice president to come speak at it, if you want to have your voice be heard, start a podcast,
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, all of my various Uber drivers, and I'm sure they were getting like just totally piled with this stuff that week, but I didn't have one Uber driver that owned Bitcoin or knew anything about Bitcoin. It's just like an odd thing, but like even the 35,000 people is still like a little bit of a bubble, and the number of people that are paying, I think that what is the stat? It's 50 million active addresses right now on the Bitcoin network. I mean, it's like
that's not that much.
It's not that much.
And I think 1 million or less have one Bitcoin or more.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, if you are a whole coiner, you are part of a select few.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think it's like I was telling you, I also was fortunate to go to Strategy conference in Orlando at the start of May. And you were saying about 2 to 4 trillion, 15 trillion, wherever this thing is going, it's going to be the really big institutional money that takes it there. And I think it's becoming more and more apparent that big money understands they need to get involved. They need to participate. They want exposure. And, whole coins are just going to be so rare. Like I think, there's prices that make sense for people to sell at, depending on your personal circumstance. But we're at the end of like regular people having the opportunity to have whole coins. And when it gets away, I think it's going to get really away. Like Hal Finney thought 10 million by the end of the 2030, right? And who knows if that will play out to be true, but I do think there's a lot of sailors continually beating the drum on this kind of Bitcoin gold rush concept when almost, I think it's 99.9% of the Bitcoin had been mined by 2035. And so I think like this thing hits an astronomical price by that time. And so it's that's my sort of like North Star in how I'm thinking about it. And we'll see.
Yeah, it seems like we're going from supply shock with the halvings causing the jumps in price to demand shock, right? Where these corporations and institutional players come in and realize that, wow, we have zero exposure. We need to get in the game. Let's get us 1,000 to a coins, and that will cost a lot. But yeah, getting back to the headlines. Yeah, so Square we were just talking about was rolling out these Bitcoin payments, and they did a Guinness Book of World Records attempt of getting over 4,000 transactions done in 8 hours, and they accomplished it. But Square on the other side was in some controversy, as Larry Lepard, your good friend. He tried to sell some books using a Square device, using the offline mode, and they were not processed because he didn't get back online within 24 hours.
Yeah, wild story. And you know, these are things that are just totally out of control. The internet was complete crap in that entire venue, and I think everybody was experiencing that problem. Larry said he lost $5,000 in book sales as a result of it, which you know, it sucks. I'm happy he sold that many books. That would be a stinger.
Yeah, but Larry's a great one, and he was interacting with people throughout the conference, and he'll make that back, no
Yeah.
problem. So yeah, let's talk about some more headlines that came out during the conference. We saw Eric Adams, the mayor of New York, a man that has been in much controversy over the last year or two, was being persecuted by the Biden administration, but has been exonerated by Trump since the power has changed hands. But yeah, Eric Adams, he has taken some of his salary in Bitcoin, and he's been wanting to make New York City a Bitcoin hub, but it's pretty hard to do when you have the worst Bitcoin law in America on the books in your state, and that is the bit license which has been in effect since 2015. And so it means that a lot of exchanges cannot operate there without special approval. And so he came out on stage and called for not only the repeal of the bit license, but also a Bitcoin bond. So many people thought that bit bonds would be one of the main narratives of this conference, but it really only seemed that Eric Adams was the only politician there who was really talking about it. So yeah, did you see this one? Did you see?
Yeah, I think it's huge. This is one of the bigger ones for me. You're totally right, and like as we're a Canadian Bitcoin company presently working on entering the U.S., and the New York thing is just so frustrating. And if there is a genuine aspiration for the United States to be some kind of Bitcoin hub, like the heartbeat of the American financial system should be the easiest place to do business in Bitcoin. And then you think about like all of the great American companies that would be headquartered in New York. This is just something that has to change. And so, yeah, I was like rooting for it. I hope he's able to move this thing forward.
Yes, he said, I believe we need to have a bit bond, and I'm going to push and fight to get a bit bond in New York so you can do those same bond investments in New York City. So yes, there wasn't much details beyond that, but the word is out there, right? And the Overton window has been pushed open even more. And I mean, bit bonds between the Bitcoin Policy Institute and the people in Washington, the debt is growing, of course, at $1 trillion every 100 days. We need some kind of answer, and putting a Bitcoin kicker on the end of treasury notes could be a way to entice people to get into them. So yes, this is how they work. It's a model where holders receive an annual interest rate of 1% for 10 years. When the bond matures, holders also receive a percentage of any Bitcoin market gains. At the same time, 90% of the funds raised through the bonds are allocated to the government spending, while 10% is used to purchase Bitcoin. So yeah, 90% towards the debt, 10% towards Bitcoin. And of course, that Bitcoin will outperform, and both the government debt issuer and the person who buys that debt are better off than they would be if they had not had the Bitcoin added to it. So bit bonds definitely made an appearance with Eric Adams at the conference. But we also had other Bitcoin legal news happen. Texas passed the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve Bill. They had gone through both houses, the Senate and the House, in in the Texas legislature, but it came back. They had to iron out the fine print, and the major thing that they changed was that the assets that they can invest in had to have a market cap of over 500 billion. Originally, they said for just 12 months, but they changed the wording to 24 months. So you have to have a market cap over 500 billion for 2 years in order to be investable by the Texas Strategic Bitcoin Reserve Bill. And Bitcoin is the only digital asset that fits that criteria. So yes, now it is sent over to Governor Greg Abbott's desk, and he seems to be all for it. So yes, the great state of Texas seems to be getting a strategic Bitcoin reserve rather shortly. Have you been to Texas?
I have, yeah. I'm really interested just to see if this creates a domino effect and what kind of pressure that puts on the American government at the federal level. This thing is finite. So if all of a sudden the individual states are buying and they're pushing the price, there's a dynamic that I think could be, like Bitcoin happens to governments, and Texas could be like maybe something that forces some more decisive action around a national policy. So we'll see. I also think it's so cool that it's Texas. They voluntarily join the union, have their own sort of like unique origin story as a state. Excuse me. And so to me, it makes perfect sense. And yeah, very cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's a top 10 economy in the world, right? They've got the power production there. They got a lot of oil. They've got a lot of Bitcoin mining. Of course, Riot has the largest Bitcoin mine in the world, a single location within Texas. All the miners are represented there. And yeah, whether it's these data centers for Bitcoin mining or AI, they are going to be utilizing Texas's energy production for that, and it makes a lot of sense. I mean, the Bitcoin scene there is so strong. Been to the Austin Bitcoin Commons, now called the Bitcoin Park. Amazing.
I remember when I was first learning about all this stuff 5 years ago. I was watching a video that was something like 10 crazy predictions for 2050, and the number one was that the country, Texas, would be the wealthiest nation in the world as a result of their early adoption of Bitcoin. And I remember thinking crazy. And now I'm like, I don't know. We'll see. Maybe there's non-zero chance that happens.
Yeah.
I'm a big fourth turning guy. I think we're in for a lot of change.
Yeah, and if there is succession in America, Texas would probably be one of the first ones, right? Just like Alberta next to you. Yeah, what's going on with that? What's going on with Alberta and succession after the
I think it's going to happen. Danielle Smith, who's the premier of Alberta, is a Bitcoiner, and they don't, Canada, the handful of Canadian politicians that have tried to take stances on Bitcoin, it's really bit them and just not worked out because of the timing of our election cycles. You just have to get lucky at a certain point with politics and Bitcoin. But I would expect in the next year you'll see a referendum for Alberta to leave, and I think that they could follow a very similar path like Texas. Alberta has piles of energy. It's not just oil, gas, minerals, water, timber, everything, and infrastructure, and could be Bitcoin. I mean, it could also be a really incredible place for Bitcoin mining. There was let's see if it comes to pass, but Kevin O'Leary was talking about an $80 billion AI facility being built in Alberta that would, I think, also involve Bitcoin. So
yeah, it's a shame what happened in the election, right? And you're right. It's crazy how to be a Bitcoin politician, it needs to line up perfectly sort of with price, right? I think Pierre got into it during the 2021 run up in 2022, but the election wasn't until 3 years later when
I
And
mean, and like the rest of the Western world outside of the US, it's so important and people just don't understand it. And like in Australia, they're getting ready to pass this law around taxing unrealized gains in their version of 401k after like a certain limit. But the way inflation works, it's like how anti-money laundering laws work, where like originally $10,000 was a lot of money, and like you know at some point like a cup of coffee is going to cost $10,000 depending on where you live. And so all of these things are just get put in place. All of our governments are broke. Yeah, I mean, this is the reason I think Alberta has been really footing the lion's share of the economic bill for the rest of the unproductive and socialist parts of Canada. And so, like, rightly so, a number of those people who are unhappy and would like to see things be better, because they actually probably would be better if they were their own country.
yeah, it's interesting you brought up Australia and their superannuation accounts, right? That's their version
Yeah.
of 401ks. So Labor just won the election over in Australia, and they have a new plan to tax unrealized gains on these retirement accounts if they're over 3 million Australian dollars. And so, of course, this hurts the young the most, because as they inflate away the money, those retirement accounts are going to grow, of course, in nominal terms, if not real terms, and they are going to be taxed to death until those
Yeah.
retirement accounts are not worth much. But in America, we just had a change in guidance over the last week. So the US Department of Labor reverses its 2022 guidance and will no longer discourage Bitcoin in 401k plans. Fiduciaries are now free to decide, opening the door to Bitcoin in the $7 trillion retirement market for the US. Pretty big deal,
Could
right?
be big.
Yeah. It does seem like this administration is leaning in, right? They the last one was not too friendly, and now whether it's, of course, the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve executive order or the vice president coming to the conference, and even these things that go under the radar, this could be the biggest deal actually to come out of the last couple of weeks, right?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, personally, and I've been in this business for like close to 20 years.
Mm,
I think that we're going to, over the next 5 to 20 years, think really differently about retirement products that lock your money away. Even if you have the opportunity to own Bitcoin or have Bitcoin exposure inside them, we're really like, it depends on what you believe. One, tax rates go up over time. They have. And so often these things are a bit of a fugazi when you start withdrawing your money later in life. And, income tax was 3% when it started, and now it's whatever. I mean, in Canada, like my tax rate here is like 55%. And that's going to continue to go up. And I think that as money just starts to work less well, there would be more of a premium on just owning Bitcoin as opposed to trying to lock it away for some sort of like rebate. But
mhm.
personal opinion, we'll see.
And our Canadians are just cool with that. They can be taxed over half their income, and
Yeah, it's wild what people will put up with. It's like the toll frogs in the boiling pot. And the big one over the last couple of years, maybe the last year and a half, was this carbon tax. And we pay a progressive tax on carbon consumption that is scheduled to ratchet up over the rest of the decade. And like, for example, heating your home in Canada is like not really a choice. It's like not an optional thing to decide to and these carbon bills are tacking on like huge portions. So on top of like the different income taxes and sales taxes, like our real rate of taxation is probably like north of 80% would be my guess. If you start thinking about inflation, and I love Dave Bradley, Bitcoin Brains, one of my favorite Bitcoiners. Dave it's theft, and the rate of theft is accelerating, and it's just an astounding level of confiscation of wealth that's going on. Like we all should be rich because if we were able to just even keep a moderate amount of the money that we earn, that's true everywhere. I think it's extra true here.
Where is that money going? Right?
Yeah, totally.
Who's
It's crazy.
happening?
Yeah.
Wild. Yeah. So I mean, from taxes and retirements, let's hop over to the market section.
Yeah, I mean, and this is like Lynn was talking at the conference about how Social Security is like no chance of staying solvent into the 2030s, right? So where does this money go? It's like in Canada we have CPP, Canada Pension Plan, which is in the same predicament. These assets cannot grow fast enough to meet their obligations, and the entire system is insolvent. So this money is being stolen for us in ways that we're never going to see any benefit from, for sure.
100%. And even those who are sitting on a lot of cash, they're seeing the value of that reserve be depleted over time. One company with a lot of money, a large treasury, is Meta. And they, this last week, voted overwhelmingly to reject a proposal to add Bitcoin to the company's balance sheet, with only 0.1% voting in favor. Microsoft had a vote like this as well late in 2024, where Michael Saylor gave a 3-minute pitch to the board and to the shareholders, and I think they received less than 1% as well. I think it was 0.33%.
I think that story, the Microsoft story, is going to go down as one of the biggest bag fumbles in history. And at that Orlando conference, Saylor turned his 3-minute pitch into a 1-hour presentation. And, at an hour, it was still pretty dense. So those guys had the opportunity to, glean as much of the why from one of the best people at explaining this in the world, and just completely whiffed it. Like, I mean, like GameStop will probably end up buying Meta at some point. Like,
yeah, I mean that was interesting as well. So of course, Ryan Cohen, he is the CEO of GameStop, and he had been flirting with the Bitcoin idea for a while now. They raised over $1.5 billion at the end of 24, early 25, in order to invest into Bitcoin, but then went silent for months, right? And in the meantime, we had the crash down to 74K, and people were screaming for him to invest into Bitcoin. And they finally came out at the Bitcoin conference saying that they had bought 4,701 Bitcoin. But in his presentation, his conversation with David Bailey from Bitcoin Inc., he didn't sound too committal, right? He's like, if the thesis plays out, I mean, 4,700 Bitcoin, that gets you to what? 2/3 of El Salvador's stack, right? Over half of a meta planet. So yeah, I mean, that's a substantial amount, right? They have to be a top 10 Bitcoin treasury company now with that much. But you would think that if somebody's going to invest $500 million in Bitcoin, they are going to see the light, but that might not be the case.
Yeah, I was kind of puzzled by those comments too. I was surprised to see them. I think it's such a potentially very cool story, and with how manipulated that stock is, the idea of really screwing the shorters with a massive Bitcoin position is really cool. And I hope he comes around, because I had heard there's some issue with how their capital structure works, that 500 million is like the maximum transaction that they can make without sort of like larger approval. And so the suggestion is that there could be, I think he sort of signaled that they're not going to say when, but they're going to keep buying. But
yeah, I mean, uniting the Bitcoin base with the GameStop hardcore GME guys has quite the powerful potential. We'll see if it all plays out. But going back to this Meta story, so yeah, We had Saylor present to the Microsoft board, and then at the conference we had Matt Cole, the CEO of Strive Asset Management. Strive was founded by Vivek Ramaswamy, who of course works closely with Trump and the administration. And Strive was formerly all about railing against companies that were into ESG and DEI. So they led that charge for a number of years, and now they are going fully into being activist investors, pushing companies to invest into Bitcoin. So we had Matt Cole at the conference give a call to the shareholders meeting and leave a voice memo telling them to invest into Bitcoin. But as we saw just a day later, they voted it down with the main reason they called it unnecessary. So they think that while we are not opining on the merits of cryptocurrency investments compared to other assets, we believe the requested assessment is unnecessary given our existing processes to manage our corporate treasury. So they think they're good with treasuries and
I think, this is the crazy part about where we are today in this like adoption of Bitcoin, where companies that big are taking meetings to seriously entertain the idea. And at the same time, the people who are making the decisions are not even doing the work to actually understand why you would do it. Like how they're talking about that, like investments in cryptocurrency, like, they haven't even grokked the problem. And so it's just bizarre. And, I think that people will be looking back at Michael Saylor in 2050, like his like Andrew Carnegie or something, and like how there will be so many executives that are going to have to answer to shareholders, and their careers are going to be ruined over this. Like, people had years to sit down and just try to understand the motivation for what they were doing, and passed, like just didn't do it. And yeah, it's wild. I mean, and like just factually, the performance of the master share price during the time that they've been accumulating Bitcoin just on its own should be enough for like 80% of the Fortune 500 CEOs to be trying to figure out if there's anything to this thing. And yeah, it's just completely shocking to me that hasn't happened, in spite of the fact that all these other things are happening. I mean, and all these like, small company stocks are just totally mooning. Like announcing you're buying Bitcoin is like the easiest way to turn your microcap into a shitcoin. Like there was a company in the UK right now, the Simple Internet company, that was like a 2 million market cap, and now it's like over 100 million. And I think they only own like $8 million of Bitcoin.
Yeah, I mean, that story is insane. The Simple Web, SWC, they were an internet design firm, right? And they were a penny stock. Then the founder goes out, raises $5 million to invest in Bitcoin, and their market cap jumps up to 175 million pounds, right?
Insane. It's totally insane. Yeah, I mean, Saylor was talking about, it's in this presentation where he blew out the 3 minutes to an hour. He was talking about how 4% of companies, publicly traded companies, outperform the S&P. 4%. And so basically 96% of companies should be buying Bitcoin instead of reinvesting into their own business. And like that that's not the only argument, but it's a pretty bulletproof starting place for thinking about how unproductive the allocation of your capital currently is. I mean, this is true of Meta. I mean, the FANG stocks have been, it's been a high time for like the Magnificent Seven, but Bitcoin will humble everyone, I think yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, look at Apple, right? Their big plan is to buy back billions and billions of stock, which they've been doing for over a decade, and
just destroying capital.
Yeah,
like, why?
You don't have any better use of those funds than buying back your own stock that you print at will.
Stupid fiat games.
Yeah, so this meta story ties into our trivia. So every week now we have a chance for readers of the newsletter and viewers of the live stream to win 10,000 sats. So the question is, why did Meta's board oppose the recent Bitcoin Treasury proposal? I think if you were just listening over the last couple minutes, you will find the answer there pretty easily. But go over to weekly.bitcoinnews.com, go sign up for the newsletter, answer into this, and we will enter you into a drawing. So last week we had a trivia question about MetaPlanet. What was their business before getting into Bitcoin Treasury? And Scott, do you know that answer?
I don't actually.
Yes, they were in the hospitality real estate business. They owned a hotel. So, but they were essentially a zombie company who didn't really know what to do after the hotel didn't go so well. So
Hmm.
they got into Bitcoin. So we had some viewers who read the newsletter last week and entered into the contest, got it right, and so we're gonna have our drawing for the 10,000 sat winner. Let's see who won it. Oh my God. Big money, 10,000 sats, generational wealth. And that winner is Paddock 2. Congratulations. All right. Yes. Hopefully you are watching live as well. If so, reach out to us, email us, rob@bitcoinnews.com, and we will get you those 10,000 sats. Yes. And speaking of treasury companies, I mean, that was the story of the week, right? Donald Trump Media raises over $2 billion to invest into Bitcoin. 21 Capital, who I think probably has the best chance to give Saylor a run for his money. They announced another 100 million in exercise convertible notes and plans to publish proof of reserves, including 31,500 Bitcoin from Tether, Bitfinex, and SoftBank once its merger with Cantor is complete. So that was a big story this week. Saylor was asked at a private dinner about proof of reserves. Why don't you show us your address, your public address, so we can verify how much Bitcoin you have? El Salvador does this, MetaPlanet does this, and Jack Mallers, the CEO of 21 Capital, comes out and says that they will do it. And it's not only these institutions, but also exchanges, right? River does this, and they have a pretty extensive way to verify that they have all the Bitcoin they claim they do. So what do you think? Saylor says this is a security threat. Do you agree with Saylor?
I love Saylor. So this is like, I'm a fan. But he has said some things that I think are just disappointing. He's had a few sort of like missteps with calling, self-custodiers, anarchists, or, this one was another one of those for me. And I think there were lots of great, there was some very defendable things that he said, but I don't see how there's a security risk associated with displaying a public address, and I haven't seen a good argument about that. So the question, people coming to his defense saying like that, there's all kinds of the regulatory bodies and systems in place to ensure that they have it. It's like totally this don't verify trust thing, which is completely the antithetical to Bitcoin in general. But I think that it is totally fair for people to want to just know the Bitcoin are there, given the size of the stack that they're buying. And it does seem that institutional buys, it's like 5,000% of the daily mined Bitcoin. And we have seen a price appreciation, but I myself am curious how much paper Bitcoin there is out there and how are they accomplishing these buys consistently without really moving the price. And I wonder. So I think it's a shame that they're not going to do it, but I will say further than that, it's disappointing to see such a prominent person in the space like gaslighting people about sort of foundational properties of how Bitcoin works. And so that's just an unfortunate thing. Nobody's going to be perfect. I don't think, this is like my general opinion in terms of, investors trying to play the space. And this isn't financial advice, but I don't see how Jack is going to catch Saylor because of the exponential growing cost of doing it. Is, like the more they buy, the bigger the more Saylor stack is going to be worth.
Yeah.
And so I think it's like there's only it's a zero sum thing, and this is like a Max Kaiser opinion, but it makes sense to me that if you're trying to like really play the Bitcoin treasury, like if that's your angle, I would personally only bet on MicroStrategy. I think that we probably, it's cool that it's becoming such a like this idea is really starting to diffuse and companies want to compete on this. But I think given the size of the head start that Saylor has, it's a concern for me that companies will have to probably try to compete in other ways by offering maybe more aggressive terms. The entire thing, it wouldn't surprise me. And like you see this was actually something that came up in conversation a lot in Vegas, the idea that the next kind of like ICO or FTX blow up is corporate treasuries, companies getting into this thing and not understanding, how it's going to play out. Maybe they don't have the conviction. David Bailey, Cohen, they've all sort of said, they would sell, if it made sense. Or there could be forced sellers. Like I think we're really headed into what could be very good for Bitcoin in general, but I think that it's pioneering and people are going to get it wrong. And there's a lot of FOMO around it, like this simple internet company, Metaplanet's, like because of the nature of how difficult it is to buy Bitcoin in Japan.
Exactly. Metaplanets in Japan, there are no Bitcoin ETFs, and the taxes on selling Bitcoin that you own personally are pretty outrageous. So it does make sense for many investors to look at this vehicle. The ironic thing, Nima makes a comment here. He says Arkham has strategy on the platform, but the balance they report is more than 100,000 Bitcoin short. So the same week that Saylor says he doesn't want to post proof of reserves, Arkham comes out and has a bunch of these addresses. Another great on-chain expert is this guy Sani on Twitter. He has also verified this himself, and I think that he has closer to the actual number that that Saylor reports, the 580,000 plus, but still not 100% of the addresses. So hide it as much as you like. There are definitely sleuths out there that will find out how much Bitcoin you have. It is a public ledger.
I mean, this is like a thing that even the like Ross somebody donated Ross 300 Bitcoin and and like the sleuths were on that like immediately. So
pretty quickly, yeah. And a lot of people were saying that it was Ross donating to himself, right?
Apparently that transaction went through like a mixer from 2012, like a
Well, yeah. And then other people were saying that it wasn't Ross donating to himself. It was people just underestimate how much a lot of OGs feel a debt of gratitude towards Ross and what he did in his sacrifice for pushing Bitcoin forward in those early days. One tweet I think was really interesting and worth bringing up was BTC Sessions came out and said there's no reason why you shouldn't post proof of reserves if you're a Bitcoin treasury company. There's nothing to fear. But Jan Pritzker of Swan came out and had a rebuttal. So what do you reveal when you show proof of reserves? You reveal the nature of addresses, helping attackers know how many keys they need to compromise. Timing of moves, helping attackers know when those keys are typically accessed. Threshold information, if wallets are kept at a certain size, which can help time an attack. Intent information, if the coins are seen moving, could be an indicator of a sell. Information that can be used in quantum attacks in the future. For example, if an address is reused, and information that can be used in attacks that we don't even know exist yet. So, I mean, I guess there are some reasons. but if you have a multi-sig stored at a custodian, I mean, these coins are at Coinbase and Fidelity, right? I mean,
Yeah, it's not like he's got an Exodus wallet on his laptop.
yeah. Yeah, the $5 wrench attack on Saylor probably wouldn't go well for anybody who tried it, especially because if you saw him in Vegas, he had his security with him at all times.
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah.
Cool. Well, before we go, I would definitely love to give a shout out to our sponsor here. We are brought to you by Rhino Bitcoin. Rhino is a all-in-one Bitcoin super app built by Bitcoiners for Bitcoiners. With Rhino, you can buy or sell instantly, send sats anywhere on the Lightning Network. You can withdraw straight to cold storage and even turn sats into gift cards or link to a Casa multisig, all within one sleek interface. Rhino is just warming up. Soon you'll be able to pay bills, borrow against your Bitcoin, and stack for retirement without leaving the app. Download Rhino at rhinobitcoin.com or tap the link below in the description. Use code Bitcoin News, one word, Bitcoin News, and Rhino will drop you $10 free in Bitcoin into your account today. Secure your stack with Rhino right now, and let's get back to the stream. Yeah, Rhino, great guys. Hung out with them at the conference. Very happy to be sponsored by them and grateful for their belief in Bitcoin news. Yes, back to the show. Wanted to talk about two different countries who made headlines in the last week, and that would be both Pakistan and their former colonizer, England. So Pakistan came out and said that they plan to establish a strategic Bitcoin reserve, but in conjunction, they are also going to allocate 2,000 megawatts for Bitcoin mining in AI data centers. But of course, guess who came out and said they didn't like that? The IMF. It seems every country who raises Bitcoin ambitions runs into these guys. So they said they didn't like Pakistan's plan because, of course, Bitcoin is volatile, as well as Pakistan's energy supply is also volatile. So they thought that adding this much 2,000 megawatts, that's a lot of Bitcoin mining, to their system would put strain on it. And the IMF, of course, has given Pakistan a lot of loans, and they are not too happy about any country breaking the chains of the IMF and the fiat debt that they give them. Pakistan is an interesting place, of course, because it's sort of at the crossroads of China's Belt and Road Initiative, as well as a rival of India, and of course is getting money from the IMF. So whether it's geopolitical or monetary, these guys are in the middle of it all. And it's interesting to see that this is the next country to make a Bitcoin play.
I thought it was huge. You know, I mean, another thing I think it's fair to say about Pakistan is they're kind of like a rogue country, like in the sense of, you know, having displayed already a willingness to, like, you know, make their own choices. So I think it's a pretty significant announcement. You know, it's this weird thing where the countries that really need Bitcoin are the ones that are trapped in the bottom of the currency case system. And those are the ones who have the least ability to adopt Bitcoin. I think, you know, things will probably change once the United States makes like a federal decision. And my thought is that they're going to get to go first. You guys are going to get to go first. So
it also helps that we are the lead sponsor of the IMF. So
yeah, probably doesn't hurt.
Probably won't run into any issues there. But it's also interesting that the other Bitcoin strategic reserve on the national level news was that MP Emma Reynolds confirms that the UK government has no plans to adopt a strategic Bitcoin reserve, calling it inconsistent with the nation's foreign exchange reserve objectives. So the UK is sitting on a stack of 61,000 Bitcoin, right? That's a significant amount of money. They, of course, have a Labour government in power right now. They are scrounging for cash, or pounds, I should say, and they don't know where to get them. So We've got the guys over at the UK Bitcoin Policy Group. We've got Freddie New and Susie Ward, two great Bitcoiners who were in attendance at the conference this week. Had the pleasure of meeting Freddie in person. And Freddie wrote a letter to the Her Majesty's Finance, whatever it's called, and they got a response. And so this was it, right? It's inconsistent with the objectives and investment principles that govern the government's foreign exchange reserves. So it doesn't look like they are about to turn those 61,000 Bitcoin into a strategic reserve, but that could be one of the biggest follies, right alongside Germany
level.
Yeah, Germany level, right? Even worse, Germany sold 50,000. These guys got 61,000.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting that they haven't tried to sell it yet, that they're still sitting on it, even as Bitcoin is at all-time highs.
Yeah. I mean, and just also like given the general desire to commit economic suicide, I think. So I'm surprised based on that alone that I think Bank of Canada sold all the gold that we had like a long time ago, and so we're actually winning that race. It's a race to the bottom.
I think England sold a significant amount of their gold too under Gordon Brown, right? I mean, these Commonwealth countries, they need some common sense.
Yeah, communism
for the Commonwealth. Yeah, that's what it looks like, dude. Cool. Well, yes, we're here at our hour. We like to keep it a tight hour here for the Bitcoin News Weekly Recap. Scott, thank you so much for joining us. If people would like to find out more about you or Block Rewards or your book, please tell us where to go.
Yeah, thanks, man. It's been a pleasure. And the book's available on Amazon. And if you're an audio listener, it's on streaming on all the Audible and audio platforms. Block Rewards, you can find us at blockrewards.ca or on LinkedIn. And myself, you can catch me on Twitter. Handle is Lantern Bitcoin.
And Scott's got his own podcast too, where he podcasts right from that nice red couch.
That's right.
Well,
the Block Reward podcast available on every platform as well.
Cool. So yes, we're doing this every Monday at 11 a.m. Eastern. Sign up for the Bitcoin News Weekly newsletter at weekly.bitcoinnews.com and catch us breaking it down here every week. Thank you so much, Scott.
Thanks.